symbolically, it's huge. It suggests that we're jumping back into the international community, going to make good with our allies, and begin to rebuild international governance. So we all know that the Paris Agreement itself, where it stands right now, is not going to solve climate change. But if we have a shot at international cooperation to move forward on it, the Paris Agreement is crucial.
Yeah, the United States needs to be there for all kinds of reasons. As you're suggesting, it's kind of that place where international conversations about coordinated climate action, at least at the country level, take place. And the United States just kind of blew all of that up by withdrawing as and when they did. And so I think the international community is going to welcome this re-entry of the United States. And one of the things to watch is just how long it's going to take to rebuild trust, because the United States was really in the lead with the development of the Paris Agreement. But now the international community is going to be a little bit wary. And so these next few months and couple of years are going to be just critical for moving the United States back into the climate community and to move that entire climate agenda forward. Well, look, I got to say, it's hard to work out what's most impactful out of all of the decisions or executive actions that have come down from the new administration, only because there have been so many. I mean, it's just been incredible to watch just the enormous number and the expansiveness of the sorts of orders that are starting to come forward. You know, don't forget that the Paris Agreement executive order, this re-entry of the United States into the Paris Agreement, was on the afternoon on which Biden was inaugurated, right? This is like, just hit the ground running, do as much as you can. And we've seen that the pace really hasn't slowed since the new administration took office. Now, that said, a couple of things really do stand out. One obvious thing is the centering and the elevation of environmental justice in not just the rhetoric, but in the actions that the new administration is starting to push. There's money attached to this environmental justice agenda. There's new kind of leadership. There's a new whole of government approach to thinking about environmental justice. And then, you know, the other big piece of the agenda, as you're starting to see it come through, is the protection of public lands against oil and gas exploration, and the reinvigoration of government expenditure in ways that can start to move markets. So, you know, there's lots to kind of call out for those, Paul, at least to the few things that stand out to me from these past few days.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And I would just add a third piece of this is an appreciation for that it's not the environment versus the economy, which we've been living with we've been living with that rhetoric for too long, and specifically the last 4 years. And I think there's a real appreciation that this is an economic opportunity, and moving forward on climate change is going to be not a regulatory drag on the economic system, but actually an infusion. It's interesting that it's GM. I think that that's really interesting. It's a sort of central corporate player in American life, and that they didn't just announce we're going to increase the percentage of our fleet that's electric, but that we're going to go fully electric by 2035. 2035 sounds a long ways away on one hand, but if that commitment is there, I think it's already shown to be a signal to other car manufacturers who are scrambling right now to be competitive in this electric market. And I think what's really important here is that it's just not that cars are going to be a subset of what we're going to be sort of transitioning toward, but I think most people think that to address climate change in a really meaningful way will require electrifying all our systems and, heat our homes with electricity and so forth, and then to drive the electric grid with renewables. And so cars are just central to contemporary life. And certainly I don't know if Super Bowl commercials are any indication, they also seem to be central to our cultural life. And so I think this is a big deal. And I have to just say one last thing. I cannot believe myself being so excited because as a professor of global environmental politics, I was trained in sort of, I don't know, many of my years of teaching have been to point out critical things and to be very critical. And so it feels delightfully new to be excited about the government getting out in front on this. But Simon?
I won't say anything more about cars, Paul, but that strange feeling you're experiencing is hope. You know, there's sometimes a dearth of it in the sorts of things that we focus on. But just to see, you know, a talented team of experienced people stepping into government and getting stuff done with climate change at the center is extraordinary. And after these past few years, when climate change action has been on the retreat, you know, this really is an exciting time. Well, in the US system, a president can do a lot, and that a lot does not necessarily endure. So what I mean by that is the way to make lasting change in the US political system is through legislative action. Congress has to make the change. But given that it's almost impossible to get legislation through a broken system at the moment, then presidential action is the way that things can happen very quickly. And with climate change, it's interesting because what we're seeing with Biden's actions from day one will set the conditions for a lot of things moving forward, including market conditions. Right? And so some of these things, they look like they might be kind of short-term changes that might then face attack or change. But as you mentioned, Paul, with that GM announcement, you know, car companies will move and electric utilities will move and consumers will move to keep pace with the way that the government is setting leadership.
And I would just add that one thing we are seeing is that government matters. That is to say, who controls the state does make a difference. For a long time, I think both of us have taught sort of structural causes of environmental harm and focusing on sort of administrative forces that are at work here. And they're still very much alive, and there's lots of constraints. I mean, yes, we've rejoined the Paris Agreement, but now we have to sort of evolve the Paris Agreement very quickly to be much more effective. So but this is to say that I think that who's in office actually does matter. How much of the steerage of this issue is going to be budgetary? How much is it going to be legislative in terms of regulation? And how much is it also going to be a bully pulpit as well, where I think Biden's surprising many people by understanding and expressing and articulating a connection between environmental justice, the economy, land preservation, indigenous people's rights, and seeing that these things can come to, and economic growth, and seeing that these things can come together. I guess I would say a huge infusion of finance that would go to address COVID and infrastructure in a way that takes seriously climate change and other environmental issues. I think we don't want climate to bleach out everything, but we do have to transform the energy system very quickly. But we've been hearing a lot about infrastructure from multiple administrations for a long time, but we are living with a grid that is anachronistic. We're living with buildings that were built at times where we were not nearly as awake to energy efficiency and so forth. So my wish list would be to use infrastructure as a way to address, social justice issues, climate issues, other environmental issues, and COVID. And it seems to me that that's possible. It feels like a wish list, but frankly, it's probably state of the shelf more than it's state of the art.
Yeah, I love that response, Paul. I wish I'd gone first because I don't know that I have too much to add to that. I mean, one other thing here is just to think about the long-term politics of climate change, and the fact that most of the American population now, higher than 50% of the American population wants climate action. And that number is going to go up increasingly if climate action can be seen to be to the benefit of people's everyday lives, right? And so infrastructure development is absolutely right. And I think money into jobs transition, particularly in communities that will be impacted negatively by a transition to clean energy, is something that the Congress should really be paying attention to.